I knew something was off when Trent walked into the conference room grinning like a weasel, who just figured out how to open the henhouse. He had that slick, overconfident energy he only gets when he is about to pin his failures on someone else. Usually me. But even I wasn't prepared for the memo that landed in my inbox that morning. Subject line, updated discounted tier guidelines, Fey internal only. No explanation, no briefing. Just a cryptic note that screamed we're about to screw over a client and pretend it is generosity. By then, I'd already built the entire Knoxwell workshop myself, curriculum, demos, assessments, the whole damn shebang. I had spreadsheets that knew more about Victor Lang's executive team than their own HR department. But when I brought it up, Trent just gave me his classic dismissive wave, like swatting a fly made of competence and unpaid overtime. We'll talk about that later, he mumbled, eyes glued to his Slack. Here is the thing. I wasn't fresh off the boat. I'd been in this company for 8 years, long enough to know when someone's about to throw you under the bus and back it over your spine just to pad their Q3 numbers. Still, I played along, because that is what you do when your mortgage, insurance, and parents' co-pays depend on a paycheck from a company that treats loyalty like a clearance item. And real quick, since you are clearly into these twisted corporate tales, do us a favor, tap that like button and hit subscribe. I know. Another call to action, but 97% of y'all are listening like corporate spies in the dark without subscribing. It is free, it helps the channel, and honestly, it is the only kind of teamwork our team actually enjoys. All right, back to the carnage. So yeah, Trent had been pulling this crap for a while, cutting corners, promising clients platinum, tier support, while handing me a rusty screwdriver and a copy of last year's onboarding manual and the Knoxwell account. That was the account. Our golden goose, the only reason we hadn't been folded into some venture capital black hole yet. Victor Lang, CEO of Knoxwell Group Holdings, had flown in personally. That never happens. The man owns more subsidiaries than I own socks. The stakes were skyscraper high. And what does Trent do? He sends an internal memo hinting, we're gonna comp part of the session like it is a raffle prize. I asked around. No one else had a clue what it meant. Marketing shrugged. Legal gave me their usual, we'll circle back routine, and our VP of sales. She was on vacation in Cabo, pretending not to know we existed. So I prepped harder. Built contingency slides, mock scenarios, recorded screen, share demos in case the software crapped out. I had Plan B through Plan G ready to go because I knew Trent would bungle something. That man treats foresight like it is a venereal disease. But here is the part that still boils my blood like a burnt out Keurig. I wasn't even on the invite list for the pre-meeting dinner with Knoxwell. Trent's name was all over the place. His face on the decks, his name in the meeting calendar, even his initials on the workshop packets I designed. He was taking my work, my words, and my sleepless nights and repackaging them as his personal miracle. I should have walked then, but I didn't. Because that is the trap, isn't it? You keep telling yourself one more week, one more project, one more raise. That'll make it all worth it. The morning of the workshop, I arrived early. I like to test the tech, adjust the lighting, hide the extra HDMI cables in case someone trips. Real glamorous, I know. But that room wasn't empty. Victor Lang was already there. Alone. Reviewing one of my slide printouts like it held the damn nuclear codes. He didn't look up when I entered, just flipped a page and said, "Who made these? They're good." Before I could respond, Trent barged in, clutching 2 coffees, one labeled Victor, and the other just blank. Guess who didn't get one? Victor barely looked at him. Morning, we're ready for the deep dive. I watched Trent fumble with his notes like a kid, trying to bluff through a book report he hadn't read. And that is when it hit me. The prep work he was supposed to do. The custom analytics Victor's team had requested, it wasn't there. He hadn't done any of it, because he was banking on me to show up and rescue him again. But not this time. Not after that memo. Not after 8 years of being the ghost behind his curtain. Not after what he said to me next. The air outside the conference room was the kind of still you get before a thunderstorm. The kind that makes your skin prickle even in central air. I'd just checked the handouts, aligned every chair like a neurotic wedding planner, and was headed back in when Trent stopped me with his lizard grin. and a whisper that smelled like stale Red Bull and desperation. "Quick word," he said, gripping my arm like we were conspirators. Instead of a boss and an employee whose patience had expired 3 promotions ago. I yanked my arm back, not rudely, but enough to say, "Don't touch me like you earned it," and followed him 2 steps into the hallway. That is when he dropped the grenade. "Listen," he said, eyes flicking down the hall, like someone might overhear the scam brewing behind his eyelids. "We're gonna need you to run today's session, as a courtesy." My eyebrow went up so fast I swear I heard my frontal lobe crack. "Courtesy?" He shifted like his spine was made of gelatin. "Just think of it as goodwill. We've had some pushback on pricing, and you know how corporate likes their discounts." I stared. "So, let me get this straight. You want me to run the flagship Knoxwell workshop for free, after I built the whole thing, prepped the modules, and customized the reporting templates, and you are calling that goodwill?" His voice dropped to a hiss. "You can either do this for the relationship, or you can pack up your call." Just like that. Like he was offering me a snack, not stripping months of work down to 0 with a snap of his brittle little ego. I felt heat crawl up my throat, that slow boil that starts behind the ears and lands right in the sternum. I should have screamed, should have told him exactly where to file his courtesy. But I didn't. I nodded, calm, dead calm, which, in hindsight, probably scared him more than if I'd thrown a chair. "Got it," I said. "Thanks for the clarity." I turned and walked back toward the conference room. My heels echoed down the hallway like a countdown. Inside, the air had changed. Knoxwell's executive team was settling in. 7 of them, not 3 like we'd been told, and right there at the end of the table sat Victor Lang, all sharp angles and cool silence, sipping his water like he already knew what was about to go wrong. I stepped to the front of the room, clicked the remote. My name lit up on the first slide, Jessica Hartman, Fay-led strategy consultant. I looked around the room, paused on Victor, then set the remote down. "I won't be leading today's session," I said. "Apologies for the disruption, but I've just been informed this will be delivered at no charge. I wasn't consulted on that arrangement, so I'll be stepping away." Mouths fell open like a synchronized swim team. One guy actually dropped his pen. Trent's face, through the glass wall, turned a shade of beet that would have sent a cardiologist running. I didn't explain, didn't rant. I just picked up my bag, nodded politely to Victor, and walked out. Past the ferns. Past the receptionist who gave me a U. "Okay. Look, I didn't have time to answer." Down the elevator, out into the parking lot, and into the July sun that suddenly felt less oppressive and more like a baptism. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for valuing myself. I made it 3 steps toward my car before I heard the door open behind me. "Jessica." It was Victor, still composed, still unreadable. He held something between his fingers. A business card. "I had a feeling it wasn't him," he said. "That prep work, the dashboards, the insight layers, the decision trees. That wasn't Trent. It had clarity. Spine." He handed me the card. I took it, read it. Not training manager, not client services. Senior Vice President, Organizational Development, Fay Knoxwell Group Holdings. Not just the company we serviced, the parent company. He nodded toward the card. "Let's talk soon, and not as a courtesy." Then he turned and walked back inside, like he hadn't just detonated a career under my feet. I stood there in the heat, heart pounding, eyes locked on that little rectangle of cardstock, like it was a key, and maybe it was. Because while Trent was inside, fumbling through excuses and flapping like a wounded seagull in front of Knoxwell's brass, I was standing in a parking lot holding the first real door I'd seen in years. I sat in my car with the engine off, clutching the steering wheel like it might try to escape. The business card sat on the passenger seat, taunting me with its matte finish and quiet authority. SVP Organizational Development, Knoxwell Group Holdings. That wasn't some polite gesture. That was power. That was reach. That was Victor Lang telling me, in no uncertain terms, that he didn't just see me. He knew, and suddenly, the workshop wasn't the story anymore. The story was this. I had walked out on a room full of suits, told my boss to stuff his goodwill where the sun don't shine, and now I was being handed the keys to something way bigger than a PowerPoint. 15 minutes later, I was still parked there, running through every what if scenario my risk-averse brain could conjure. What if it is a test? What if I just burned my only bridge? What if he was bluffing? What if I just ruined my entire damn life? Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text appeared. Jessica, it is Victor Lang. I'd like to set up a conversation. Informal, just coffee. We're exploring something larger. Vendor. Side training standardization. Your input would be valuable. He attached a location. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., a place downtown I'd never heard of. One of those hidden gem coffee shops where everything smells like success and baristas look like they also code blockchain on the side. I stared at the message, rereading it like it might disappear if I blinked wrong. It didn't. And the card on my seat still said the same thing. Knoxwell Group Holdings. Not just the branch, the whole damn family tree. I drove home with the air conditioning blasting. Not because it was hot, but because I needed something to ground me. My thoughts were flying faster than traffic. I kept remembering the way Trent had looked when I left, mouth hanging open, fingers twitching like he wanted to grab the narrative and yank it back. But it was gone. The moment passed, and he hadn't realized it was never his story to tell. That night, I barely slept. Not out of anxiety, out of alertness. Like my brain had finally kicked into gear after years of being drugged with corporate jargon and diluted ambition. I pulled out my old notebooks, the ones I used to scribble ideas in before. Trent sucked the originality out of every meeting. I opened a blank doc on my laptop, titled it, If I Were in Charge, and I wrote, Modules, Gaps, Vendor Bottlenecks, Metrics that Actually Mattered. Ways to measure comprehension beyond smile sheets and hollow feedback surveys. Real, scalable, customizable frameworks that didn't rely on Trent, style smoke, and mirrors. I showed up to that coffee shop 5 minutes early. Victor was already there. No assistant, no entourage. Just him and a small notebook, flipping through something like he'd already started building a plan with my name on it. Jessica, he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. I'll get straight to it. We've been evaluating our vendor training pipeline. It is fragmented, sloppy. Some of the worst content comes from third parties we've paid too much for. Your session prep, best thing we've seen all quarter. But more importantly, we know it was yours, not his. I blinked. How do you know that? He smiled. Not smug, not fake, just confident. You'd be amazed what people say in procurement meetings when they think no one's listening. I laughed, too surprised not to. So what are you asking? He leaned in. I want to explore what it looks like if you step out from behind the curtain and work with us directly. No red tape, no Trent. We're not offering a job. We're offering collaboration. A consulting opportunity, quiet for now, but meaningful. If it works, it could grow into something bigger, something permanent. My mouth was dry, but my brain was screaming yes in every language. I'd need to form an LLC, I said. Like that was the hard part. We'll connect you with legal, he said, already texting someone. You'll need to evaluate our existing partners, identify redundancy, suggest structural changes, but you'll have support, budget, autonomy. He paused. One last thing, he added, sliding a thin folder across the table. We'd like you to start by reviewing this. I opened it. It was a list of current training vendors across Knoxwell's umbrella companies. Near the bottom, in faint gray font, was my old company's name. Right below it, flagged for review. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't a lifeline. This was the first brick in a new road. One I was finally building for myself. The first meeting was in a low-lit boardroom, buried deep in Knoxwell's downtown tower, the kind of room that whispers old money and NDAs in the same breath. No name tags, no small talk, just 10 seats, 10 laptops, and 10 people who all somehow already knew who I was. Jessica Hartman, said a woman in a tailored suit, with a badge that just read, Levi Fay Compliance. She gestured toward a seat at the end of the table. Thank you for coming in discreetly. We prefer to move without the PR machine for now. They didn't waste time. No. Welcome packet. No. Tell us about yourself. just a rotating screen of vendor analytics and internal notes that would have given any legacy consultant a coronary. "Supply chain readiness," said a man, 2 seats down. "We've had 4 system-wide slowdowns in the last 18 months, all traced back to training failures, misunderstood protocols, misconfigured systems, delays that cost us in days, not hours." I didn't say a word, just nodded and let them keep laying out the wreckage. "We want to understand the real cost of bad learning," said Levi, "and we want to know what you'd build if you had no handcuffs." By the end of the meeting, I had 3 assignments: pilot audits for separate divisions, each with its own mess, warehousing, last mile distribution, vendor onboarding, 3 different beasts, all somehow being trained by overlapping modules my old company claimed were proprietary. I knew them all. I wrote half of them, and I knew exactly how they'd fail. They handed me a burner laptop and a badge with a guest QR code. "This stays off the main org chart," Levi said. "For now." It was surreal. 1 week ago, I was printing name tags for Trent's ego parade. Now I was deep inside one of the largest holding companies in the Midwest, flipping over stones and finding rot that had been festering for years. I got to work, pulled all the client-facing learning materials from their vendor hub, started tagging duplicate content, outdated terminology, compliance violations. It was like forensics with pie charts. And the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Trent's company had been skating by on recycled PDFs, bloated LMS templates, and acronyms ducked, taped together into something that only looked like a strategy from a distance. Meanwhile, LinkedIn started pinging. First, it was Rebecca, from HR. "Hey girl, just checking in. Heard you are doing exciting things. So happy for you." Faye, then Ethan from sales. "Do you have time to hop on a quick call? No pressure, just would love to pick your brain." Then Sarah, my old desk neighbor, who sent a gif of a cat waving and a single line. "Do I need to start job hunting?" It wasn't just curiosity. It was the digital scent of a sinking ship. The silence from the corner office back at my old company had shifted from smug to spooked. I clicked over to Knoxwell's internal event calendar to double-check something. Knoxwell's annual Vendor Development Summit was coming up in 2 weeks. That event was always a flex. Every partner got a booth, a badge, and a 15-minute stage slot to peddle their wares. Only this year, something was missing. My former employer's name, not under confirmed, not under pending, not anywhere. I refreshed the page, checked again. Nothing. They'd been dropped from the summit. I sat back, heart drumming. They didn't know yet. Or if they did, they were still telling themselves it was an admin mistake, a scheduling glitch. Trent probably had an email written blaming the intern, but the truth was simple and brutal. They were already being frozen out. I got back to work. My audit summaries started building into something more powerful than I expected: patterns. Failures that didn't just cause inconvenience, they created liability. OSHA risks, supply delays, vendor churn. I built a report, labeled every known failure with a color-coded impact scale. Red tags were the worst, unsalvageable. Guess which vendor got the most red? By Friday, Levi called me into her office again. "We'd like you to present your initial findings next week," she said. "Not to us, to the Executive Procurement Committee." I blinked. "That is, fast." "We move fast," she said, sliding a folder toward me. "Especially when we're bleeding." Inside the folder, executive titles, room assignments, and 1 key bullet point. Final vendor recommendations, Faye Hartman led. I wasn't just in the room anymore. I was shaping the room. I formed the LLC in under 48 hours, named it Northbeam Consulting. Clean, strong, forgettable to everyone, but the ones who needed to remember it. Knoxwell wired the retainer before the ink was dry. No fuss, no haggling. Just a 2-sentence contract and a portal login that unlocked the kind of access I used to beg Trent for, with a color-coded pitch deck and a dozen CCs. They wanted me in the field. "We need you to see what we're dealing with firsthand," Levi said, handing me a lanyard with a different vendor's logo and a smirk that suggested I should pack antacid. So I shadowed. 3 sites, 3 different training vendors, all of them delivering what I can only describe as performance art in mediocrity. One guy read bullet points straight off a projector while cracking jokes about forklift injuries. Another passed out binders filled with typos, including a memorable one that instructed trainees to discharge hazardous feelings responsibly. The third walked the group through a compliance checklist while simultaneously ordering DoorDash and asking if anyone knew what GDPR stood for. No follow-up materials, no assessments, no actual systems walkthrough. Just warm bodies in cold rooms checking boxes while Knoxwell hemorrhaged efficiency. I sat in the back with my notebook and tried not to grind my teeth down to powder. That night, I opened a new document titled Phase 1, Structural Overhaul. I started with foundations, defined learning outcomes by department and compliance category, then drafted assessment criteria tied to actual metrics, system accuracy, error reduction, turnaround times. I built tiered learning paths for high turnover roles and flagged every topic where a one-size-fits-all approach had failed Knoxwell for years. I rewrote everything from scratch. The modules, the flow, the tone. Gone were the chirpy icebreaker intros and generic mission statements. My version opened with real case studies, where someone forgot a step, and the result was a $300 K shipment delay. I replaced the dead-eyed HR stock photos with actual floor maps and drop-down simulations. If you clicked the wrong thing, it didn't say, "Oops." It told you how much revenue you just flushed. Levi saw the first prototype and didn't say anything for 10 seconds. Then, send this to the board deck team. I want it on Monday's prep call. My name was on the slide. Hartman Fay proposed LFAT framework, V0.3. A week later, I was invited to join the vendor evaluation huddle, not as a guest, as a contributor. I showed up with my own tablet, own coffee, and a PowerPoint that pulled no punches. One slide in particular earned me the longest silence I've ever caused in a corporate setting. It was a heat map of current vendor effectiveness. Each company was plotted against cost, delivery impact, and compliance risk. There, sitting dead, center in the bottom, left quadrant labeled high-risk Fay low value, was my old employer, Trent's firm, logo and all. No drama, no commentary, just hard data. I watched as one executive leaned in, squinting like he couldn't believe the name. Another scribbled something in the margin of his printout. Levi cleared her throat. "Jessica, could you elaborate on why this vendor in particular underperforms across all 3 metrics?" I didn't blink, gladly. I laid it out. Recycled content, no customization by industry vertical, templated assessments with 0 enforcement, and a pattern of client dissatisfaction masked by aggressive upselling tactics. I didn't say Trent's name. I didn't have to. That vendor, I finished, has relied on institutional inertia. But the numbers don't lie, and neither does the impact. When the meeting ended, no one clapped. This wasn't a movie. It was cleaner than that, quieter. A few nods, a few phones, lighting up. A procurement lead slid his notebook shut and whispered, "It is about damn time someone said it." Later that afternoon, I received an internal memo marked confidential, strategy alignment notes. My name was listed next to 3 initiatives. The title next to it, LFAD Framework, led Fay External Consultant Oversight. I sat back in my chair, staring at that memo. That ridiculous, beautiful memo. I wasn't climbing a ladder anymore. I was building the damn building, the cease. And desist arrived on a Tuesday, slid under my apartment door like a passive, aggressive pizza. Thick envelope, embossed letterhead, and Trent's signature at the bottom, shakier than I remembered. The subject line alone could have won a prize for corporate melodrama. Immediate termination of competitive engagement and notice of client solicitation. I laughed, out loud, then read it again, just to make sure it wasn't parody. Trent was accusing me of poaching proprietary client relationships and misappropriating intellectual training property. Bold claims for a man whose most original contribution to any project had been the phrase, "Let's circle back." The next line claimed I had breached my post-employment restrictions, which would have been a real threat if a single one of those restrictions existed. There was no NDA. No non-compete. No non-solicit. Nothing. He'd always said, "We're a family here," and like most corporate families, that meant zero paperwork until the moment someone bolts and takes the furniture. Still, my hands trembled as I reread it. Fear is funny that way. Irrational, slippery, even when you know you are clean, you feel the grime of accusation. I emailed it to Knoxwell's legal team with a subject line that simply said, "Incoming circus. Thoughts?" Levi replied within 10 minutes. Already flagged it, sit tight. By noon, I was on a video call with Knoxwell's associate counsel, a former litigator with the calm, lethal energy of someone who has seen men like Trent get eaten alive in court. She smiled like this was foreplay. "Jessica," she said, sliding the letter on screen like evidence. "Just to be clear, Knoxwell contracted your newly formed LLC for training framework development. You are not, and were never, bound by any exclusivity, non-compete or confidentiality clauses with your previous employer. We checked." Twice, she added with a wink. She'd already drafted a response. It was short, brutal, and surgical. Highlighted all the factual errors, reaffirmed the legitimacy of my engagement, and closed with a friendly reminder that further contact will be considered harassment. 3 hours later, Trent's firm went completely silent. But I wasn't celebrating yet. I knew how this game worked. You win a battle, they regroup in the shadows, and start gossiping to anyone who'll listen. I watched LinkedIn like a hawk, expecting whispers. "She stole our client. She is unstable. She burned bridges." Instead, I got a message from Knoxwell's procurement head. A single line: "We'll be going through preferred vendor status updates next quarter. Just FYI." No smiley, no fluff, but it might as well have been a trumpet blast. Preferred vendor status meant long-term contracts. It meant locked in revenue. It meant Trent's company wouldn't just be excluded from this project. They'd be wiped from the board entirely. Still, I kept my head down, did the work, delivered phase 2 of the audit ahead of schedule. My dashboards got sleeker, my modules smarter. I started integrating feedback loops so Knoxwell's field managers could flag training gaps in real time. Suddenly, the material was evolving with them. Dynamic, practical, alive. Levi stopped me in the hallway after one presentation and said, "You know, people assume consultants are just here to tear things down, but you are actually building something." I shrugged. I got tired of waiting for permission. That week, my old employer released a LinkedIn post, a vague, desperate update about refocusing our training offerings for niche sectors. No mention of Knoxwell, no client logos, no faces. A ghost of a company pretending it still mattered, and I wasn't nervous anymore. I was done apologizing for having a backbone. I was done building cathedrals with someone else's name on the cornerstone. The first time I saw my name in Knoxwell's official documentation, not in the footnotes, not in some supporting materials PDF, but on the title slide of a boardroom deck, I had to reread it 3 times just to make sure it wasn't a hallucination brought on by stress and cold brew. Vendor Retraining Initiative Phase 1, Lead Jessica Hartman, Northbeam Consulting, my fonts, my framework, my actual voice, not filtered through a layer of Trent's corporate cologne. And this wasn't a one-off. By the end of the week, my material had rolled out to 5 regional hubs and 1 international branch. The feedback came fast. Clarity. Finally makes sense. Best onboarding we've had in years. Someone from Knoxwell's Czech office even emailed me directly to ask for a translated version, said his team had started calling my templates the Hartman system. I was the machine. Levi scheduled a progress briefing with the executive procurement group. I showed up with a sleek walkthrough, progress stats, and live testimonials stitched into the deck like victory laps. And I opened with one slide that had 0 charts or logos, just the words, "Clarity is kindness. Confusion is cost." I didn't quote anyone. That was mine. After the meeting, one of the VPS came up and said, "You've got the kind of clean aggression I like to see. We're giving you phase 2. Meanwhile, in the background, the guillotine dropped. Knoxwell quietly terminated all existing training contracts with Trent's firm. No call, no courtesy exit interview. Just a blunt email from legal that said, "Effective immediately, All service agreements have been concluded. No further deliverables required. I didn't hear about it through a memo or a press release. I heard about it through a whisper. One of the junior staffers in vendor oversight sent me a screenshot from a Slack thread with the subject: Immediate decoupling Fay Vendor 2133. Vendor 2133, that was Trent's firm in their internal database. The postscript made my jaw tighten. All access credentials revoked. Archive communications. Notify legal if contact occurs. It was surgical, silent, merciless. I never wanted to ruin anyone, but I also wasn't going to keep apologizing for beating people who thought they owned me. And then, just when I thought the pulse of drama was finally flatlining, someone leaked an internal memo from Trent's own office. The subject line: Client has gone dark. The message was from his CUO, still no response from procurement or Levi. Last 4 emails bounced. Hartman must have cut a deal. Do we have a back channel? Send recovery team? Maybe fly out. Try to get in front of this. Recovery team, like they were planning a hostage extraction, not begging for scraps from a table they used to own. A former colleague forwarded it to me with a one-line message. It is chaos over here. He is blaming everyone but himself. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat in a glass-walled war room in Knoxwell's 18th floor, reviewing the final mock-ups for the new vendor onboarding flow. Every box, every drop-down, every line of copy had passed through me. It was smart. It was human. It worked. Control, edged with disbelief. That is what it felt like standing on a mountain I wasn't sure was real, until I looked down and saw the wreckage of every ladder I'd been told to climb. And in the distance, I imagined Trent pacing his office, staring at his inbox, still convinced this was fixable, but I'd already changed the locks. The vendor directory update hit Knoxwell's intranet on a Monday morning without fanfare, like an obituary quietly slipped into the back pages of a newspaper. No bold announcement, no flashing banners, just a silent refresh of the preferred supplier index. And Trent's company wasn't on it. Not delisted, deleted. Vendor 2133 no longer existed in their system. Not archived, not flagged, just scrubbed like a stain. I sat in the executive workspace with a coffee that tasted like victory and a tablet in my lap, watching the dominoes fall in real time. You'd think it would come with fanfare, some grand office cheer, maybe a champagne cork. But it wasn't like that. It was clinical. I didn't feel giddy. I felt quiet. The fall didn't stop with Knoxwell. Within days, I got a call from a client I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey Jessica, real quick, did you work on the express load compliance program last quarter? Because we were told that was Trent's team, but it looks a lot like your structure. They weren't the only ones asking questions. 2 other clients Knoxwell had referred to Trent's firm back, when I was still under his thumb, started peeling back the curtain. Suddenly, contracts were under review. Scopes were on hold. And old promises Trent had printed on glossy brochures were now liabilities someone had to account for. Then came the recruiter call. Jessica Hartman, she said, in that smooth, calculated tone that recruiters use when they already know the answer. We've had 3 executive leaders mention your name this week. Would you be open to an advisory role? High-impact transformation work? Very flexible, very visible. She didn't name the company. She didn't have to. Word was out. The woman behind the curtain had stepped into the light, and the industry was paying attention. And then, the cherry on top, Knoxwell's closed door summit. Invite only, no press, no fluff. A war room of executives from across their supply chain, all gathering to set the tone for the next fiscal year. They wanted me to keynote. Levi called personally. Not a presentation, a directive, she said. You've set the new standard. They need to see what that looks like. I said yes. Built a deck that didn't look like anything Trent's team ever made. No glitch phase, no padded slides, just raw before and after stats, anonymized failure points, and a very polite demolition of legacy vendor logic. I called the talk, When Training Becomes Infrastructure. They gave me a standing ovation. Meanwhile, Trent's world was shrinking by the hour. His LinkedIn, once a flood of motivational quotes and vague client wins, had gone silent. No posts in weeks, no likes, no updates. Just a profile stuck in suspended animation, like a wax figure of someone still pretending to matter. Then the exodus began. Sarah from HR left. So did Ethan from sales. Then 2 junior consultants, who used to DM me at midnight, begging for job referrals, all gone. Their profiles now read, open to work. And the rumors started. Whispered first, then emailed, then confirmed. Trent's firm had just lost over $8 million in projected pipeline. Not signed contracts. Pipeline, the illusion of momentum. The thing investors squint at and pretend is revenue. Gone. Turns out when your biggest client cuts ties and their procurement chief starts making quiet calls, the message spreads fast. Don't touch this vendor with a 10-foot pole. I sat on my balcony that night with a glass of wine and my laptop open. I didn't check LinkedIn. I didn't refresh analytics. I didn't reply to the congratulatory emails flooding my inbox. I opened a fresh document, typed 4 words at the top, build what they broke. Then I stared out at the skyline somewhere. Trent was probably still spinning, still blaming, still promising fixes he couldn't deliver. But I wasn't part of that orbit anymore. I was the gravity now. The boardroom smelled like lacquered wood and inevitability. 12 chairs, 11 filled, 1 empty. I was seated at the head, back straight, pen poised, not for show, but for record. Every executive in that room knew who I was now. Not just the quiet one who fixed what their other vendors broke. I was the architect behind the new standard they were building on. The conversation had shifted somewhere along the way. I wasn't presenting to them anymore. I was speaking with them. Reviewing vendor metrics, approval flows, new oversight tiers for supplier education. Then Levi slid a folder across the table, clean and crisp. We'd like to formalize your role, she said, tone neutral but eyes warm. Executive advisor, direct report to the board, 6-figure base. Equity in the oversight platform we're scaling, timelines flexible, but we hope it is immediate. I blinked. Once, not out of shock, but to settle the wave of clarity that hit me all at once. I said yes, quietly, because in rooms like that, volume is insecurity. We moved on. Another vendor rep was scheduled to present, a walk through of legacy support training. Nothing I hadn't already dissected 3 ways from Sunday. That is when the door opened. Unannounced, not late, uninvited. And in walked Trent. The same greasy confidence he used to wear like cologne was gone, washed out under a pale, tight face that looked like it hadn't slept in a week. He scanned the room like he was expecting to find allies, familiar eyes, someone to throw him a line. Then his gaze hit mine, and froze. I didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't scowl. Just turned slightly in my chair, folded my hands over the review notes, and said, level as concrete, thank you for coming. We'll be evaluating all past performance. I believe you were next. The room went still. He opened his mouth like he had something rehearsed, but no sound came. Just a small twitch of the jaw and the subtle collapse of someone who'd finally run out of narrative. I let the silence hang, not dramatic, just final. Trent took the empty seat at the far end. No one made eye contact. No one passed him a packet. The review began. They walked through vendor data points, red flags, underperformance, compliance gaps, all the things I'd once tried to flag from a cubicle, while he told me to stop overcomplicating things. Now they were written in full bleed on 42-inch displays, dissected like malpractice under a microscope. No rescue came, no recovery team. No one left in the room who owed him a thing. Afterward, people stood to leave. Quiet nods, phones buzzing, meetings to get to. I stayed behind for a moment, sipping the last of my cold coffee, staring out the wall of glass toward the skyline. Trent shuffled out without a word, and as the door closed behind him, I allowed myself one thought, one sentence, no one to hear it but me. The last workshop I ran wasn't free. After all, it just had a different invoice. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.